Awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. Excited to talk to you all as small businesses and small business owners around accepting money online, but really about cash flows and the relationships that into the future, now and into the future, that how banks can help you not only just get by, but start to thrive. So Trisha, it's awesome to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So obviously, I think I shared some with you my background on Startup Week and just how awesome this entire week is as resources for the community, just to help us all, make progress in our journey, regardless of where that's at. But maybe if we can just start. I've always, as a small business owner, wanted to talk to a banker. So I'm really excited about that today. But could you maybe just share a little bit about your background and role at Chemical Bank?
I'd be happy to. And good to know the perception is that we're not just all boring, that you're excited to talk to me. My background has honestly always been in banking. Right out of college, started out as a credit analyst where I conducted a lot of the cash flow analysis and collateral analysis and all that fun stuff and underwriting commercial and business loan requests. I soon became a middle market commercial lender. And then I evolved into the world of business banking, which kind of brings us here today. But I was able to develop and implement a training strategy for the branch network for an entire footprint of a Flint-based bank, and manage business banking there as well. I then evolved into healthcare business banking, where I focused in the healthcare industry, did a lot of practice acquisition financing, and I had actually an opportunity to come to Chemical Bank a few years ago in treasury management, where I worked with small business owners and larger middle market based companies and helping them with their cash flow and treasury management needs. And most recently, what I'm most excited about is the opportunity I have right now, which is a market manager for business banking for Chemical Bank, a division of TCF Bank. I currently manage the east half of Michigan, including southeast Michigan and northern Ohio, and I have a team of business bankers on the ground meeting with business owners every single day, which used to be in person. Of course, now everything is virtual. Lots of background and meeting with business owners, and that tends to be my passion, which is why I've landed here.
Since it's Detroit Startup Week, we're going to go ahead and assume that your favorite businesses are in Michigan, not so much Ohio, but we'll take that offline. Everyone that's attending and starting to roll in here, please use the Q&A to ask questions for Trisha. Really here is a resource to be able to talk to a banker, especially in these times. So Trisha, I sent you over a list of questions for our conversation today. I left one off purposely, though, but you kind of hit on it, is what are you doing when you're not wearing your banker hat? To demystify that all bankers are boring, give us a little background on who you are.
Sure. Well, usually I have a glass of Patron on the rocks. A lot of it during the PPP. But seriously, I've got 3 kids. I live in Frankenmuth, Michigan. So my 3 kids keep me very busy with sports. Our passion happens to be boating, so this is our time of the year to spend time on the lake in Michigan. Was a golfer growing up, still trying to get back to that a little bit, and that's about it. Not anything super exciting, so sorry to disappoint.
It's awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, so I asked a bunch of business owners in the area just about their experiences, their thoughts, and really their views of how they use their bank to succeed in their business, both nonprofits and business owners. And so I thought maybe this could be a little bit of a journey around that. So I'll give you a personal experience. Before I joined Autobooks, I started my own company, and I remember being, I've been in fintech, financial technology for 15 years, and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, where do I go open my business bank account? So I thought we would start there for new business owners or anyone that's in here or listening to the recording. How do you even go about evaluating the best bank for you?
Sure. And, I'll be perfectly honest. What's important to each individual business owner is very, very unique. And I've learned that along the way. So what I feel should be important doesn't necessarily translate to maybe what another small business owner might feel. So some, what's most important to them is convenience and location. Others, it's all about that relationship and that personal service and that good advice that we can get. Some might say, rates and fees are most important. I would say, and I have, I kind of look at things because my husband's a small business owner too, and what's important to him is, one of the reasons why I specifically chose chemical in the business banking space is because I feel like it's a perfect marriage between the capabilities of a large bank, which the technology and the tools and the products and the resources, but then being able to deliver that at a very small community bank-based approach, which I think is very important for business owners. So I would say, again, for everyone, it's different, but I think that we have found, especially through this pandemic, how very, very important those relationships are. So for me, my value proposition has always been being a trusted advisor, being accessible to my clients. I've had clients texting me, all hours of the night on the weekends, having someone that always has the small business owner's best interest at heart. If a small business owner is looking for a banker, I would hope that they would look for those attributes. I don't think just comparing cost against cost is necessarily the best approach when you're looking for the business. But who can give me sound advice, who can understand me and my business and my vision and my future and my goals and my challenges, and who can, kind of walk along that journey with me, I would hope would be important.
That's really great. And you hit on something that, being in the industry, we talk about relationship banking quite often, the future of business banking. I'm sure you and I have read a million articles of, will banks have branches in the future, kind of stuff. And like most things, it's, they say one thing, we think it's the other, and it's usually somewhere in the middle. Share with the folks here, business owners that are listening. Why is it important to them? Like, what does relationship banking not only mean for you in chemical in the industry, but maybe some ideas or examples of how do small business owners utilize that others might not be doing today and could or should be?
Sure. I think that relationship, that value proposition that you just spoke of, is taking the time to have real conversations with that banker. So you say, how do we take advantage of that relationship approach? It's really spending that time with them initially, because oftentimes, we'll even call business owners and, we'll ask, can I come out and visit you? Or would you prefer to come in and visit with me? And it's, I'm too busy, I don't need anything. And that's a very typical response, is I don't need anything, I'm good. And that can be frustrating, because I think you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you may need until you really have that conversation, with a banker. So my advice would be taking advantage of the relationship by taking the time to sit down with a banker who can evaluate, how are you currently collecting from your customers? Let's talk about that. What's working? What do you just hate? What do you wish that you could change or improve? Let's talk about how you're handling your payables. What's working well there, or what frustrations do you have? What are you doing yourself? What are you perhaps allowing an office staff to do? And then we can help identify, from a relationship approach, ways that we can create efficiencies, protect against fraud. And in doing that, oftentimes it can end up, saving the company money too.
So I really want to unpack this part because I don't think that the go-to or the initial response, I'm starting my business or I've been running my business and I don't even know what I don't know, right? So we always like to kind of have a mindset at Autobooks that there's not a single passionate business owner out there that secretly was hoping to be a CPA or controller, right?
Right.
Yet when they get this help, it is dramatic in not only the financial health of the business, but also predicting the future cash flows, right? Which is often where they get into trouble. And I'd love to unpack that. But let's shift the paradigm a little bit. So I'm a business owner in Detroit. Maybe I've been running for even a couple or few years, which many of them, are doing without having a really good financial process or back office. I call my banker. What do I share? How do I start that conversation, or maybe help us understand what are good questions to be thinking about that I could bring to a relationship at my bank?
Sure, and some of it depends on your own situation, what your future goals are, et cetera. But I would just say, ideally your banker may actually be reaching out to you proactively, because we do try to do that in normal times. Be reaching out, and it might be called an annual review or an annual or semi-annual outreach. But if you're calling your banker, I would just ask, and just to back up, we have, in particular at my bank, we have different levels of support. So we have banking center managers who do support, many business owners, and they're, in the office most of the time and accessible. But then each banking center manager has access to a business banker, which would be a specialist, we'll say, on my team. So you have actually access to someone, locally right at your branch, and a business banker within, the geography of, that branch network. So you may reach out first to a banking center manager, or to, if you bank with another bank, to the relationship manager assigned to you, and just say, I would really just like to sit down and talk to you about how I'm currently operating my business, how I'm currently collecting from my customers, how I'm currently managing my cash balances, and how I'm currently handling my payables. And for me, what I found over the years is those three categories really encompass most of what banks can help you with. How I receive, how I manage my cash balances, and how I handle my payables. So if you have anything to write down, those might be kind of the 3 points, and that can be a great conversation starter with your respective banker to help identify some ways that we can add value.
That's awesome. All right, so we're going to get back into those because I want to really unpack cash flows. Not, as you might have said, maybe not the sexiest topic, but I think one of the most relevant right now, and maybe that is sexy. So, but I know we have a ton of questions and engagement, and I really want to also kind of pull the veil back a little bit around PPP. So. We were talking right before we went live here with the session that most folks don't realize just how incredibly strenuous and I will say on occasion ridiculous it was for the banks to be able to administer this stuff. But for the folks that are listening here, what did you guys learn, and I categorize as chemical, but even just you, Trisha, what really stood out as important things that we should be thinking about as business owners right now that really kind of came to light during PPP?
Sure.
Because I'm assuming you talked to, how many businesses, it's incredible. What's that feedback look like?
Yeah, well, I first want to say it was very humbling. That's the first word that comes to my mind, is humbling. The amount of business owners that I was able to speak to and to hear firsthand their experiences, what they were facing, some even tearful, extremely, extremely humbling experience. And the other thing that it brought to light for me is just the level of concern and care of my team members. And I have, the greatest business banking team, I feel, right? But I was able to see a completely different side of them that I honestly don't think that I ever would have experienced had we not went through this process together. So to see the dedication, the number of hours, the amount of concern. I had bankers that I would see logging in at 4 a.m. I had bankers that were in the chat room at 2 a.m. Can you help me with this application? I have a question. I had bankers working all day Saturday, all day Sunday. We all worked all day on Easter Sunday. We kind of joked that we had one long work day that just kind of lasted 3 weeks.
Kept going.
Yeah. So for me, again, just to see the level of concern and care in my team, I couldn't be more proud. But the feedback that we got from our customers, they were panicked. It was a very, very scary process for them. And we were able to be kind of counselors to them, sounding boards to them. It gave them someone to turn to, and we could listen. And just for them to be able to have someone looking out for them, to explain to them what information we needed and why we needed it, and look up the status of their application and helping them evolve through every step of the process. We really, truly just developed relationships with these folks that I think now we have their loyalty forever. I mean, it's just an experience that I don't think they'll ever forget. And on this topic, I actually did print a couple of, quotes that I want to share because they're just extremely meaningful to us. And I'll try to summarize. But one, thank you for all that you've done during this difficult time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and all you've been doing for us. It's been such an unsteady time for me and my business, and I'm sure for everyone else, but your daily emails, your calm and funny demeanor has really calmed my nerves. Your updates were easy to understand, always informative. I will be praying for you and your family that you stay safe and healthy. Upon approval, I cried tears of joy. Finally, some light during such a dark time in history. I hope to meet you one day personally to thank you for all of your hard work to us and to your other clients. One said, thank you for saving my family once again. We will never forget what you have done for us. And I have countless and countless examples of these. But to get this type of feedback was extremely rewarding.
Doesn't sound like such a boring job, maybe after all. So I'm curious, and feel free to type into the chat or the Q&A, everybody. I will pose a question to you all. As business owners or as part of small businesses, how well or how close is your relationship with the business banker? Because Trisha, in working with Chemical, it's been very, very revealing in that you're so passionate about the work you do. You're baking cupcakes, you're cutting grass, you're fixing roofs, you're an association, you're a church, but you often don't realize that there's so much value at your community bank. So when it comes to small businesses, the industry itself has really not focused on this very important customer segment. As a broad stroke as a whole. And there has been a trend in small business banking for quite some time now, but this COVID, one of the, dare I say, positives that hopefully is coming out of it is a renewed focus on what we need to deliver for them. And Chemicals is very far in front of that. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you today, and obviously being so big here in Detroit. So how are you all thinking about small business banking? What does that mean to the bank overall? And what progress do you hope to make for folks that they are looking for that kind of relationship to help them manage and run their business?
Sure. And so, we've developed a whole line of business just dedicated to the small business segment, which obviously, that's what I'm a part of. But, our future state, we really just want to continue to grow and evolve and continue to provide, I'd say, new and unique solutions that our customers need. So by understanding how things are changing, and just like through this pandemic, for instance, and listening to what our clients' needs are, allows us to react and allows us to try to formulate, new and unique solutions in the background. So even though we are continuing to react each day to some maybe new situations that are coming at us,
Yeah.
we have entire teams in the background that are still working relentlessly, doing research on product, on future trends with, looking at different fintech options. How do we see future state transactions being conducted, and why, and what's at a company's benefit? So all this research and background, we're just continuing to invest in and spend time in, because we want to look forward. We don't want to be that bank that at the last minute is trying to react to a situation. We want to be able to see and pave our own way, which kind of ties into our new Autobooks offering that we'll talk about in a minute. So I guess I would just say, we're definitely not going to stay the same. Our plan in business banking is to continue to be a trust advisor, continue to provide relationship-based advice, but also provide multi-channels for our businesses. Some really truly just want to avoid a trip to the branch, and they want to conduct business electronically and virtually, and we're going to support that. So we're trying to listen to our clients, and we're trying to make new and unique ways for them to do banking that benefits them.
Awesome. And so I love that. And so that really kind of transitions us into a saying that my father used to always tell me growing up. I'm not sure if he's listening, but hopefully I get it right. And it's that he used to say, you either suffer, he used to say, hey kid, listen, you either get to suffer the pain of discipline or suffer the pain of regret. And so I think as business owners, we're often reacting, especially when it comes to cash flows. And so some stories that I'd love to share, and then start to unpack, how a community banker, my community banker, that you all are in the position of, can actually help us as small business owners. And so one of the, we always hear the statistic, the number one reason businesses fail is cash flows. And I want to just ask you a very 101 question, because I remember starting my first business years ago. I have no idea what you mean when you say cash flows. Can you unpack and just give us a little bit of download when we're talking about cash flows? Start with what are they, and what do they mean to me as a small business, or what should they mean to me as a small business owner?
Sure. And yeah, so I'm going to kind of break it down into two different scenarios, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And, I happen to have a degree in accounting, so I'm going to look at it a little bit differently, than an average small business owner, where their focus every day is what they're really, really, really good at that I could never do. But, the first, we'll say cash flow analysis, which I think I probably mentioned in my introduction as a credit analyst. So a cash flow analysis is basically just a formula that a bank uses based off a company's tax return to determine whether or not, on an annual basis, a business generates enough income to cover all of its expenses, plus gives you enough to make the loan payments on the loan that you're applying at the bank. So if you apply for a loan at a bank and they say, you're declined, for instance, because of a lack of cash flow, that means when we looked at the net profits of the business and did our little formula, on paper, based on tax return data, it doesn't show that you make enough money to cover all of your expenses plus the loan payment. So that is distinctly different, though. When we talk about treasury management and cash flow, that more evolves into your cash balances at any given time in your checking account. And a lot of small business owners suffer because of the timing differences between their receivables coming in and now their payables that are due and are going out. So a small business owner, might have, say, $100,000 worth of receivables, but until they're collected, that provides zero cash flow for that company. And some companies are very, very dependent on that. So when we talk about managing cash flow, in its simplistic, in the most simplistic sense, is how can we accelerate your receivables and get the money in quicker from whatever the service or the product that you're selling, whatever your revenue source is, getting the actual cash into your checking account quicker, and then perhaps looking at ways to maybe slow down the payables. And so that's kind of, a simple way of looking at cash flow. I haven't ever had a business owner that's super excited about how do I hurry up and pay my payables. Like, I've got all these bills due and I want to make sure I can get them all out today. That's usually, not the idea. It's how can I collect everything I can immediately, but then maybe hold off, on my payables. And by, businesses having more cash, they've got more liquidity on hand, they've got more capital, and then they're going to have access to maybe, investing in equipment and growing and hiring and all of those things. And that's why, a cash position for businesses is so essential. And especially during turbulent times, having a little bit of excess liquidity in a checking account for a business can honestly make or break their situation.
So that I know this is going to be a general, we're going to get into payables and collections and try to unpack those a little bit for everybody and try to share some actionable insights too. So if anyone's in here and that has questions, please keep asking them. To start though, and I know this depends on industry and type of business and things like that, but any rule of thumb, right? So as a business owner, how it's hard to say like, oh, you should have 6 months of cash reserve, right? Like you hear that as a consumer, you should be able to pay your bills for 6 months. Like that's the rule of thumb. It's a good metric to measure as a small business owner though. How would you advise somebody to go about thinking about that, recognizing that if you have inventory versus if you're a services type business, that's going to change. But some directional, like what should they be thinking about, like from that perspective to see the health of how they're doing?
Sure. That's a really good question. There definitely isn't a one size fits all. And I've heard various from different spectrums of what that should be depending on so many scenarios. Probably the most common of what I hear is 3 months of expenses in cash set aside. And I want to mention too, it's very important for businesses to have relationships with consultants. And I'll say that, the banker is one of the most important relationships. But what's also important is I believe relationships with an accountant or CPA, and a business attorney. And so some of these questions, like what you just asked, would also be perhaps, an important question to ask a CPA too, where they're working with other customers in similar industries, very aware of, cash implications to businesses and then tax implications, et cetera. So I would feel, if you really want to know in your situation what would be appropriate, maybe asking an accountant would make sense too. But on average, I'd say about 3 months.
Great. That's awesome. So one of the challenges that I have for everyone that's listening or just small business owners in general is part of maturity of running your business is understanding that you need to have a goal. If you don't know what the goal is, then you're probably in a spot where you need to start working with your banker, with other folks like the consultants, on what that cash flow goal should be. So I always think that one's so important. I don't know if I shared with you, Trisha, but my father is a contractual CFO for small businesses and nonprofits in Detroit. Oh. And he walks in and the first question he always asks is, what's your cash flow goal? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, I have enough money to make payroll next week, right? And so I think, the first thing you do is set a goal and then you start finding different ways of getting there. So let's unpack some of those ways of getting there, because I think that for folks that are listening, it's probably one of the most actionable things, and I don't know if it's ever been more relevant than it is right now with the uncertainty of tomorrow or beyond. Let's start on the payable side. So on payables, I always like to say, being from Autobooks, we work with so many small business owners that you can't tell the difference between a debit and credit, and that's very, very normal. So expenses, cash out, payables, what are some ways that you would implore folks listening here today to extend their cash flow reserves or runway by focusing on payables? What does that look like and what does that mean?
Yeah, sure. And there's some, non-banking solutions too that you can employ as well. And I know you and I spoke about this before, but even just trying to negotiate the best terms that you can, right, with vendors. So sometimes we just look at, what's in front of us, but we don't necessarily look at some additional and unique alternatives. And, right now I've had, many clients who have had to turn to vendors and ask for some extended terms. even landlords asking for, some extended relief on rent payments, things like that. But more long term, one of the easiest tools I found with handling payables is utilizing a business credit card. And I want to be very, very clear that I would never recommend maintaining a balance. So the idea is to pay it off every month. But by putting payables on a card, it's actually typically more secure than writing checks. And then it also gives you that extended billing cycle where you don't actually have that cash outlay. So it's definitely going to extend things. You might have 30 days with a vendor, but then they all accept credit card payment. You get another, billing cycle on top of that. That's an easy way to extend out having that actual cash outlay. And I just want to touch on, because I feel this is really important and this is missed a lot with small business owners. But I think that many business owners don't realize how risky it is to write checks. So I'll sit down with the average business owner and ask, how are you currently handling your payables? And a lot of them will say, well, what do you mean? I write checks, and why shouldn't I write checks? The reality is, every time you write a check, you have to understand that you're basically handing out your account number and your routing number. And there are solutions that we provide that can help protect against that. That's kind of another conversation. But by putting expenses on, a credit card, one might ask, well, my credit card could get compromised, and it absolutely could. But it's a much easier and cleaner process to dispute a charge on a credit card, shut that down, get a new plastic issued. If you have fraud on a checking account, it can be described as a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Now that your operating cash is compromised and potentially having to, shut down an account, open up a new one, have a whole new account number, all of that. So that's the easy way. When it comes to employees, I recommend direct deposit. Most businesses are evolving to that or already have that, but that's one of the most common conversations we have with businesses. How do you pay your employees? And then here's what I like to ask, how would your employees like to be paid? I think that's important, right? And some of that kind of ties into employee retention. Most often, if a bank customer has direct deposit with their bank, they're going to qualify for a better account. Usually with direct deposit, you might get a free checking account, or you might get a discount on a rate, or you might get some free checks, but there's usually an advantage to having direct deposit. It's more secure. It avoids the employees, having to run to the bank. And it's definitely, more secure from a business owner's perspective than, handing out checks to employees. We've had employees just, they take their phone, they take a picture of the check to deposit it, and then they just drop the check on the floorboard of their car. Other people get in the car, they drop it, or they take the check into a party store to cash. You don't know where they take that information. So those are some really quick, easy hits on the payable side. And the direct deposit technology, it's actually called ACH. So many of you are probably familiar with the term ACH, but that's just an electronic means of sending payment, from your account to someone else's account. But that technology can also be used to pay vendors as well. So as we're trying to avoid, again, the paper checks and all of that, and perhaps we don't have a credit card, or some vendors don't allow credit card payments or charge an extra fee, another option would be to pay a vendor electronically, much as you would with direct deposit, and it's the same service. So it helps, pay for the service, if you will, the more that you use it.
I will be the first to be vulnerable and say I did not actually realize just how risky the checks were. I always knew it was way easier to do it on credit card because you can make it a lot easier to automate, but I don't think a lot of folks understand how risky that is. That's a really good tip. We actually got a question. So I'll kind of reframe this in that I feel uncomfortable going to my vendor or who I owe money to try to renegotiate. Any advice on how to approach that kind of conversation?
Yeah, and that might honestly be a little bit out of my realm. As a banker, I guess if it were me, I might approach it as, given and explain what the situation behind it is, what types of terms or what types of flexibility are you currently offering your customers, such as myself, and just kind of keep it open-ended. Yeah, I definitely don't get into those conversations directly. So
Right.
that would be my advice.
All right, so let's go to the collection side. What kind of same question around from the payables. What are you seeing around the ability to collect money online, otherwise, the shift to that? And what are some best practices for often called accounts receivable, or even if it's a nonprofit, donations and such? What would your suggestions be, and what are you seeing that's working really well to improve cash flows?
Sure. And this is somewhat predicated by industry, because obviously there are certain industries that are very, cash prevalent. There are others that are more, billing and receivable based. And then, of course, healthcare, right, where we've got, insurance billings, et cetera. So some of it's, dependent on the industry. But in general, with the whole premise of trying to speed up collections, waiting to receive a check in the mail typically is one of the most, I'd say, inefficient methods of receiving payment, and the most timely, right? And we're trying to speed that up. So anytime we can try to, electronify a collection, and or be in control of the collection, which is even better, that would be at our customer's advantage. So to give you an example of that, you might, in your particular industry, have an ability to electronically debit your customer's account. And again, it depends on the industry, but let's say you own some storage units, for instance. You might say upon, signing the contract, there's a monthly fee for the storage unit. You might get a slight discount if you're on auto pay. That goes right back to that ACH technology I mentioned. ACH can be used not only to pull or to push payments out to pay for payments, but it also can be used to pull payments in. So that's one good way of putting the business owner in control, where they're going out electronically and they're pulling in the payments from their customers. So then it's on time. It's an automated process, and you're avoiding, waiting for the check and all of that. There's automated, automatic reoccurring, pulling that can be set up. Credit card payments, as I'm sure everybody knows, is becoming more and more and more prevalent. In the past, we've had business owners who have chosen not to take credit card payments, or maybe even charge a fee for it. The trends that I'm seeing are that business owners now care more about how their customers want to pay. So understanding that their customers prefer to pay with a credit card, even if they have to increase the cost of their service incrementally to help cover their costs, that's a trend that I'm seeing. I think psychologically, if a customer is charged an extra fee because of a credit card payment, psychologically it just doesn't feel good. So I've seen more clients, instead of saying, okay, I'll accept a credit card payment, but I'm going to charge you an extra 3%, just say, you know what, I'm seeing a trend. Many of my clients want to use a card. I'm going to accept credit card payments, but I might just increase my cost of goods and the cost of what I'm selling a little bit, a few cents a piece or a few dollars or whatever that may be across the board. The other technology I want to make sure that you guys are aware of is, with this pandemic, we're not making trips to the bank like we used to. So it's one thing to actually collect from our customer, but then it's another thing, if we actually do have checks, to get those checks to the bank. So what's always been popular, but is even more popular now, is what's called remote deposit technology. So if you are still receiving checks from customers, let's say it's not really applicable for you to pull from their checking account, you're not accepting a credit card payment from them, they send you a check, there's a scanning device that most banks offer this service, and you can scan your checks right from your desk. So whether that's at home or at your office, and it uploads the funds right into your account, and there's no need to ever even take those checks into the bank. So we're seeing an uptick in that technology too.
It's one thing I want to encourage just the entire group as we're coming down here the last few minutes, is to really change your mindset on what a bank can do for your small business. And I think that, Trisha, the pandemic has created an engagement digitally that I've talked to folks at Chemical Bank, and just the amount of mobile downloads, and all of a sudden realizing that all of these technology tools do exist there. So I really would encourage everybody, go talk to your banker, go ask them what is available, and express your needs. On that note, and so passionately and excited that Autobooks, a Detroit startup, not so many years ago was just a dream and an idea. Now having the opportunity and privilege to work alongside our hometown and kind of pillared bank in chemical. Very passionate about accepting payments online, compressing that receivables or the time it takes for you to get paid. I would love just to hear from a banker for the community, because I think that this is a really new mindset for small business owners to think about their bank. Chemical, I will go ahead and say, is progressive in the way that they're partnering with startups or fintechs such as us to innovate and create value faster. Um, Give us an inside look, like as a banker at Chemical, how do you feel about that? What does that mean? And I don't think folks realize just how progressive that might be. But what is y'all's approach on moving forward on small business banking? You talked about technology and innovation.
Mhm.
What does that look like in Chemical for small business owners?
Yeah, and I want to answer that and integrating in the auto books, because to your point, and we've been working and partnering with you for quite some time to roll this out, and I think the timing couldn't be more perfect, because as businesses are trying to now collect remotely because they have to, Autobooks has been a saving grace for so many businesses that, due to the pandemic, couldn't bill and collect the way that they used to, and now this has allowed them now to continue to receive receivables, helping their cash flow and helping them sustain. But with small business owners, what I found is, like you said before, they're really, really, really good at what they do every single day, but they might necessarily not have the time and the expertise to manage the business side, and they don't know what they don't know. But some solutions, quite honestly, are not a fit for small businesses. They seem overwhelming. They seem complex. They're very expensive. Some of these companies that you might contract out as a third party, the customer service is terrible, and so they feel that they can't reach someone when they need them. And so we wanted to find a solution that was specifically tailored to that small business customer, that would be extremely, extremely easy. And through our partnership with you and Autobooks, that's exactly what we found. It's a technology that helps fix many of the problems they have with creating invoices, getting those invoices to their customers, and creating all of the different payment options that a customer might choose from, and very quickly, efficiently, and cheaply, I should say, get those funds right into that business owner's checking account. And that's exactly what Autobooks does. So it's very, very unique. I think it differentiates Chemical Bank, TCF Bank, and it fits in perfectly with our vision and our alignment of wanting to continue to move forward, move into the future, and look at new and innovative ways to help businesses. And that's exactly what Autobooks has done.
Yeah, and we so very much appreciate the partnership and the common goal or mission to remove the items that you might not love about running your business, right? And are often the reasons that you might not make it either long term or even to the next stage. I'd focus as small business owners a lot on the time it takes you to do all of this. So if you calculated the amount of hours that go into your week or your month or your year, that could be reallocated, either just personally for your sanity, or getting back to working on your business, or getting back to that estimate that you haven't called back for a week, or fill in the blank. It's death by a thousand cuts a little bit, where they just keep adding up. And so it's exciting to see progressive banks. There's 5,000 of them to choose from in the country. And I think that, looking for a bank such as Chemical that is investing in technology and those processes is a really, really good place to start. So Trisha, just final thoughts here as business owners are getting out of the PPP period and thinking about what's next for them. Any final thoughts here to wrap up as a banker and suggestions or
Sure.
anything to share?
Yeah, well, first, on behalf of my team, I want the community to know, how much we truly, truly care, just which is evidence. The Wayne County initiative that we put into place with the small business loan program that we put in, that's just, one way of us trying to give back to the community and in knowing, of all the challenges with the pandemic and, wanting to support. So, one final thought would be, yes, we're a bank, but yes, we truly care. Again, my team and myself, we choose to work here for a reason. One of our biggest core beliefs here is care like a neighbor. So we think about every single day and everything we do, is what we're doing and how we're handling the situation in a way that's caring like a neighbor. And that just drives many of our decisions, process. And that's just really, our approach every single day. And we're proud of that. I would also recommend, if you don't have a relationship with a specific banker, reaching out, and establishing that relationship, having a contact, having someone that you trust, having someone that you click with that understands you, understands your industry, understands the challenges that you're facing, and is willing to take the time to provide you with some, sound advice. There's a lot of uncertainty, of the future and things that we're facing. But I just tell everyone, we're in this together, and we're a strong community, and we're going to move forward.
Well, Trisha, thank you so much for making the time, especially with how busy you all are right now for our community, for our small business owners, and hopefully shedding some light on, kind of rethinking the relationship with their bank. So really appreciate it. We couldn't be more excited as a Detroit startup to also be working with you guys and, again, serving, the small business owners that's really needed. So thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing, and excited for the HQ to open up in Detroit when we all get back to some level of normalcy too. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.